It's time for another week of fantasy football, so I am here to bring you my Week 8 IDP rankings, and we're going to get to that right now. Welcome back to the Dynasty Rewind YouTube channel. My name is Bob Van, the IDP man. Welcome in if you are new, and if you are new, I do hope you consider subscribing to the channel. We are bringing you daily fantasy football content covering things like Dynasty strategy, waiver wire, IDP rankings, and even Devi fantasy football. If you enjoyed the video, I do hope you leave a like, comment down below, maybe if I had somebody too high, or maybe if I have somebody too low. But with all that said, let's hop right into my Week 8 IDP rankings. Before I jump into the rankings really quick, I do want to mention the scoring settings listed above are Fantasy Pros standard IDP scoring, and since these rankings are done through Fantasy Pros, I just figured it'd make sense to use their scoring format. Now, like I said, we are going to dive into these real quick today, get y'all in and out. Kicking off at number 1, we got Harold Landry going against Indianapolis. Harold Landry has been an absolute treat this year for your team if you have him. Had a bit of a miss last week despite having a good matchup, but they'll need him a lot this week going in a divisional matchup against Indy. I look for him to make good on last week and make some noise in this matchup. Got Myles Garrett going against Pitt, and he and Pitt have a long history. You know, he's the guy who tried to take off Mason Rudolph's helmet and beat him with it. But now Big Ben's a quarterback. It's a little bit of a different matchup. I don't think that Pittsburgh offensive line is really that good. I think they're a little overrated. The one thing I'm worried about with Myles Garrett, he's not as much of a speed rusher, and Big Ben loves to get the ball out quickly. So this could limit Myles Garrett upside of actually getting to Big Ben, but who knows? We'll have to see. I still believe in him. You know, he's one of those guys where if you have him, unless you have really, really good defensive linemen alongside him, he's in your lineup and no matter what. On the other side of that coin is TJ Watt, who's been an absolute stud this year. I'm actually just going to move him up to number 2. You know, it's hard to keep him out of the top 2, top 1 conversation. Heck it, let's put him up there. But Cleveland's been pretty beaten and bruised on that offensive line. They've showed a little more give this year than in years past. There are some rumblings that Baker's actually going to be able to play in this game, which I'd be pretty shocked if he did. He's playing through a lot if he is. But TJ Watt, he's in that category of guys where if you have him on your roster, he's in your lineup. Moving on to number 4, Danielle Hunter versus Dallas. Has kind of had a quieter bit to the year after starting off pretty hot, but he's been, like I said, a little quieter as of late. Going against Dallas, it's a tough matchup, but he's one of those guys. All he needs is like 1 week to get back into the thick of things and show that he's still out here. Dallas is definitely a tough matchup, and that's why I'm actually going to bump him down just a couple pegs, just because I don't like that matchup as much. He does have a ton of upside. You know, he's down here with Nick Bosa, who is kind of that same way where either he's hitting or he's not. That brings us to Hassan Reddick going against Atlanta. Another quiet week last week, but, you know, I don't expect him to stay quiet for long. He's had a really gangbuster start to the year. And going against Atlanta's offensive line, I think this might turn into somewhat of a shootout with Atlanta passing a lot, which will give Hassan Reddick just that much more opportunity to get in that backfield and rack up some points. There are a few teams that throw as much as the Los Angeles Chargers, and there's few teams that run as many plays as the Los Angeles Chargers. This should make Matt Judon's life a little easier. He'll be going up against the rookie Rashawn Slater, who has shown out this year, but you know, it's still veteran versus rookie. We'll see what happens. Matt Judon also does contribute to the run game. He's not just a pass rush specialist by any means. So I think that gives him a bit more of a floor to begin with. Already touched on Nick Bosa against Chicago. That's one where I could really see him blowing up. He's a guy that should be in your lineup unless you got these other guys above him or just somebody else you feel more comfortable with. But that Chicago offensive line is just so dang terrible. Then, like I said before, Danielle Hunter at 7. We got Leonard Floyd chilling at 8 going against Houston and that pretty poor offensive line. Tyrod Taylor is somewhat expected to start, but otherwise it'll be Davis Mills back there again. Got Shaq Barrett going against New Orleans. That New Orleans offensive line really showed some give against Seattle last week in prime time. I'm curious to see what Shaq Barrett does. He's been used kind of differently this year, it seems. Not solely a pass rusher as he has been in years past. Moving on to number 10 with Jonathan Allen, and I told y'all that he would be a menace for the Green Bay offensive line last week. Him and Montez Sweat both got to Aaron Rodgers on multiple occasions. Then we got Aaron Donald going against Houston as well. Pretty poor offensive line. However, they are doing a good job of getting the ball out quickly and not giving opposing defensive linemen much of a chance. And on the other side of the ball, we got Jonathan Greenard going against Los Angeles Rams. Now, don't get me wrong, the Los Angeles Rams are not a great matchup, but Greenard has just been such an absolute stud in the games he's played this year. He's racked up 6 sacks over 4 games, and nobody's really talking about the guy. So great thing about him, he's still available on a lot of waiver wires heading into this week. Not sure if you were able to check out the waiver wire video from this week or last week. If you haven't yet, you definitely should. But that is it for the defensive lineman. You can kind of see all these other guys chilling here. If you want to check out my full ranks just free of charge, you can hit the link in the description box below. Have my full rankings there over at Fantasy Six Pack. Check those out if you feel so inclined. But now we're going to dive right into the linebackers. Darius Leonard has made his way back to the top of the mountain, sitting at LB1 ranks. Going to be tasked with tackling Derrick Henry this week. It's a pretty tough matchup, but Darius Leonard has kind of showed over the past few weeks. He seems healthy. He's back in it. He's making plays, doing all of the things. So I'm very confident having Darius Leonard back in my lineup, which he never really left, to be honest. But it was just one of those things where I just wasn't really sure what he was going to do. We got Eric Kendricks going against Dallas, going to be tasked with tackling Zeke Elliott. We have Devondre Campbell going against Arizona, which this is probably the riskiest rank I'll probably have all week. He's been really, really solid, and he's been racking up a ton of plays, which has obviously been huge for him. And he's been an integral part of this Green Bay Packer defense while everybody else is hurt. Arizona likes to run the ball. I could see this game getting out of Green Bay's hands early. When they've gotten ahead early, Arizona loves to just play keep away, run the clock out, get James Conner out there to do the dirty work, and pretty much just kind of soak away the clock while they're sitting well ahead. Cole Holcomb going against Denver. Cole Holcomb has been really, really solid this year. No complaints for him. Kind of a surprise. A lot of people just expected John Davis to just be the dude. Turns out Cole Holcomb has a bit of a say with that, and he's still been the main linebacker to roster despite John Davis being in the regular lineup for a few weeks now. Then we got Roquan Smith at 5, which honestly, I'm just going to move him up to 3. He's been so solid. Not really racking up the big plays this year yet, except for a pick 6 that he had earlier on in the season, but still one of those guys that you just trust to, make an impact in the run game at minimum and give you a really solid floor every single week. Going against San Fran with a pretty nasty run game. They like to run a lot, so he'll be tasked with probably tackling Elijah Mitchell quite a bit this week. Moving on to number 6, Logan Wilson, going to bump him up as well. He's now sitting at number 4 going against the Jets, and this Jets offense is probably going to be a mess, so kind of concerned about how much they'll be able to sustain drives and how much work Logan Wilson will actually get in this game. It's less about the talent of the player for this one and more about I just don't even know if the Jets are going to run 40 plays in this game. I'm sure they'll run at least 40 plays in this game, but it's going to be a low 50 game probably. We got Bobby Wagner moving up to number 5 as well. I might even move him up a little more. It's going to be, one of those situations where, this list is pretty fluid, and that's why you need to feel free to stay tuned. Follow along with that link in the description. Like I mentioned, those stay updated. They update before every Thursday night game, before every Sunday morning game. Usually try to get to them Saturday morning as well. Bobby Wagner going against Jacksonville. A pretty decent matchup, I think, with how much Trevor Lawrence runs and then how much James Robinson really is that offense right now. I feel pretty safe starting Bobby Wagner in any given event. Then we have the Arizona linebacker twins going in this matchup, and this is going to be interesting for them because with Devontae Adams out along with Allen Lazard, there's not a lot of passing game options, which could elect the Packers to try to run the ball more. However, this Arizona front has been pretty studly against the run. Got Christian Kirksey at number 10 going against the Rams. Jordan Brooks at 11 going against Jacksonville. Same boat as Bobby Wagner. I think he's ready, willing, and able to fill in for Bobby Wagner once Wagner decides to hang it up. Then chilling at number 12, we got Troy Reeder, who recently got his job back with Kenny Young being shipped out of town. Word on the street is that it is very possible that Ernest Jones starts getting a lot of run as well. But for now, I truly believe it's the Troy Reeder show. You should be adding him on your waivers if you haven't already. Get this guy on your squad, and I think you have probably an LB1, LB2 at worst for the rest of the season. And then as you can see, kind of a sneak peek at the rest of the ranks, but we're going to kick right over to the defensive backs. We have Derwin James chilling at number 1 going against New England this week. Not an awesome matchup by the book, but Derwin James, while he's been healthy and not beaten up this year, he's been pretty darn solid. Making plays, making tackles, contributing on all levels of the defense. So I got no issues or qualms with having him at number 1. Then we have Kevin Byard chilling at number 2, and he's actually been a little bit more of a factor in this defense from a run-stopping perspective as well as a playmaking perspective. Going against Indy, Wentz has been pretty safe with the ball this year, so it's not as much of a you're hoping to get an interception out of him. The upside's always there, but I wouldn't call it a done deal like you could have said last year with Wentz. I just really like Taylor Rapp. I think, this might be a little high, but, he just has that super awesome tackle floor. He's also been pitching in on some big plays this season as well, not just such a tackle monster as in years past. So I say if you got him, go ahead and start him. Then we got Trayvon Diggs, really, really worried about him when the big plays and the interceptions go away, but it's one of those things where it's you just leave him in there, you let him do his thing, and when you just kind of bite the bullet when it happens. Until then, just enjoy the ride. Then we have Quandre Diggs chilling at number 5, who's been a pretty big surprise this year. I'm going to bump him down a little bit, but not the defensive back in Seattle that we expected to pop off this year. Quandre Diggs has pitched in on run defense, he's pitched in on big plays, you name it. And that's part of what Jamal Adams' problem has been so far this season, is just not pitching in on any big plays. Last year he led defensive backs with sacks, and I think he even set a record of having over 9 sacks for a defensive back. Moving on to Harrison Smith at number 7 going against Dallas. He's going to be tasked just as much with stopping Zeke and also playing deep. This Dallas offense loves to throw deep and throw quite a bit. Harrison Smith is going to need to be on the top of his game, and hopefully on the top of his game for your fantasy teams. Budda Baker chilling a little lower than normal at 8, and just kind of coming off of a few games where he's just not been himself. I just think he's being utilized a little differently this year. It's just kind of, it sucks to see. There's been plenty of studs this season that just have not been studs for us, but are still doing really well in the real life football, which, let's be honest, for our teams is more important. But Budda Baker's still an awesome player, can go off really at any time. And this Green Bay matchup, like I said, is going to be a weird one, but one you definitely still want to have him in your lineup for. We have Jalen Ramsey at number 9, playing the star role on this defense and, doing a damn good job of it, making tackles, which has never really been his thing. It's basically been like, hey, yo, you're a shutdown corner, and that's the end of it. But now he's just playing all over the formation. Moving on to number 10, we got Logan Ryan, who's kind of calmed down, but probably expecting to see more out of him with Jabril Peppers being out. Also expect to see a little more out of Xavier McKinney. Going against Kansas City, who love to throw the ball deep. Kansas City really needs a get right game right now. They are kind of falling into that pitfall of like real concern and real worry. We have Kari Willis going against Tennessee, also tasked with tackling Derrick Henry, but Kari Willis has been a nice little surprise for your fantasy team this season. If you have him, still pretty widely available on waivers, so go get him if you can, if you need a DB. Then at 12, we have Kyle Duggar going against the Los Angeles Chargers, a team that loves to throw, loves to run, runs a ton of plays. I think he's going to be a pretty solid option this week. Chilling in that secondary, playing in the box. He plays a little bit of everywhere on that defense. Duggar is another guy that's been a pretty nice little surprise this season. And there's a little sneak peek of the DB rankings the rest of the way, but like I said, feel free to use that link in the description to check out the full rankings. If you want to make additional efforts to improve your team, I do hope you check out the video on the screen right now. In that video, I lay out my 5 favorite trade targets for players that I think could win you your league this year. I do hope y'all enjoyed the video. Please leave a like if you did. Comment down below who is too high, who is too low. And while that is it for me today, I will see y'all in the next one. But until then, y'all have a good one.